Yeah, so let's dive into the obvious first option, the Kansas City Chiefs. They won the AFC West last year. They went to the Super Bowl, and everyone knows what happened in that game. They lost to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Their offensive line was full of injuries, opt-outs, and backups. And they addressed it big time this offseason. Let me actually pull up the Google Doc real quick.
Or if you want, I can
Forgot
just
to
read
pull it
it
up.
and then
Yeah, go
come back
ahead.
to.
Go
All
ahead.
right, so they brought in, like John mentioned, guard Joe Thuney, got center Austin Blythe. They also traded for Orlando Brown. That was a big trade. Defensively, or sorry, let me stay on offense. Also, they drafted Creed Humphrey, who's a center from Oklahoma in the second round at 68. And then also they grabbed running back Jerick McKinnon via free agency. And then defensively, got defensive lineman Jaron Reed, who's a big reason why Chris Jones, I think they've been playing him at defensive end more this
Mhm.
season. So they're looking to do that. And then cornerback Mike Hughes, who I liked coming out in the draft, who's had ACL issues and things like that. And then linebacker Nick Bolton, who they drafted in the second round, who I also kind of like too as well. But yeah, can go ahead.
Well, they also lost Eric Fisher and Mitchell
Oh, yeah.
Schwartz, two tackles. Like we said, they were both injured during the Super Bowl, and we saw what happened, but they did replace them pretty well. They lost Sammy Watkins, wide receiver. He signed with the Baltimore Ravens,
Yep.
right?
Baltimore.
They lost Bashad Breeland. I know you're not the biggest fan of him.
He's actually solid.
Uh,
Our friend Mitch is not a fan of him.
Yeah, I thought you were both not big fans of him. Anyway,
No.
and then they lost pair of running backs, Damien Williams and Le'Veon Bell. Damien Williams had opted out last year, so they didn't really notice, losing him right now. And then Le'Veon Bell, we saw the offseason drama that revolved around him and Andy Reid. So I don't think the Chiefs are too upset about losing him either, especially with Clyde Edwards-Helaire in year two. So for me, I'm really scared about this Chiefs offseason, man. I think it was so obvious that if the Chiefs had their offensive line at full strength in that Super Bowl, that game could be completely different. Patrick Mahomes was running for his life, making some of the craziest throws I've ever witnessed, and it was hitting his receivers right in the hands and face, whatever, and they weren't catching it. And I just think that was a game to where that's not going to happen again. I don't think the Chiefs receivers are going to have a game like that because we've never really seen them struggle with drops, especially some of the catches that were as easy as the ones they should have made. And then with the emphasis they put on the offensive line, I don't think Andy Reid and the management the Chiefs have ever want to see over the next 10 years they have Patrick Mahomes, him having to run like that again, ever. And Orlando Brown, I was shocked they were able to make that trade because the Ravens, obviously, the Ravens and Chiefs have sort of been rivals the last few years as Lamar and Mahomes have both elevated to MVP status and two of the best teams in the AFC. So I was shocked that the Ravens were willing to trade Orlando Brown there. I think he's going to be a beast. He could be one of those guys in a few years, could be contending for one of those top 5 tackle spots. I don't think he's there yet, but he's got the potential to. Austin Blythe, a good center, solid option. They also get Laurent Dernay Tardif, right? That's how you pronounce his name.
Louvernay, Darnay Tardif. The
Louvernay,
doctor
yeah,
is what my
yeah. They're
stepdad,
getting
who's a
him
Chief fan,
back.
refers to him because
Yeah,
he's a doctor.
they're getting him back from the opt out last year, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
So that's another reinforcement on the line. And then Joe Tooney from the Patriots. I mean, I think he was the highest paid offensive lineman in the offseason this year. And I mean, what an ad to have him and Orlando Brown now on the left side to anchor Patrick Mahomes' blind side. Um, at this point, and also Creed Humphrey. I was super high on Creed Humphrey out of the draft. I thought he was one of the best interior offensive linemen, arguably the best center in the whole draft. So, man, at this point, I find it hard to see any other team but the Chiefs going back to the Super Bowl. But we'll get into that when we get to predictions later down the road. But Chow, how do you feel about their offseason ads?
So similar to you, I like the offensive line ads, obviously, but I like the fact too they got bigger on the offensive line. I mean, Orlando Brown is a 300 plus pounder, and playing going from right tackle, but played left tackle last season while Staley was out. So that boosted his value, and that's one of the reasons why he asked for a trade. Obviously, I'm curious to see exactly what they do in terms of their starting 5 offensive linemen, because Tardif's a guard. The only really guy that's truly played tackle is Orlando Brown, so I'm not sure if they're going to kick, like I said, Duvernay Tardif out to tackle, and then have Creed Humphrey play guard, and then Blythe stay at center, and obviously Thuney's gonna stay at guard probably as well. So I'm not exactly sure. But regardless, I trust that they'll get their best five out there. Andy Reid's former offensive lineman, obviously offensive genius. So I assume he's going to get the five out there. I like the move, like I kind of mentioned too when you mentioned Jaron Reed. I liked how their D line by default got bigger. They lost some guys, but adding Jaron Reed to play D tackle and then moving Chris Jones to defensive end, I think is pretty good because Jones, obviously, as we know, great disruptor inside. And I think his blend of power and speed is going to be difficult for tackles. Guards and centers had issues with it. Now tackles and tight ends are going to have their hands full. As long as Frank Clark, who we'll see what happens with him, because I think that's a very key piece. That
Yeah.
I think he's already. We'll see if he gets suspended or anything for his off the field stuff that happened this last season. One thing I am a little worried about is their defense, but their secondary. But it seems like as long they still have Honey Badger. Juan Thornhill has another year removed from his ACL injury, so he might be better this year too. And like we mentioned with the Seahawks, as long as the defense is at least average, they'll be fine because we know the offense is going to be good. It'll be interesting, keep an eye out both fantasy wise and just in general. This is a big year for McCole Hardman because, like John mentioned, Sammy Watkins is gone, and I think we're all assuming McCole takes that role as the number two because people forget too. Chiefs took McCole Hardman over DK Metcalf. Like, imagine if the Chiefs had DK Metcalf and Tyreek Hill right now. That would be wild. Granted, they value McCole for special teams and stuff like that. So, I expect this team to be back in the Super Bowl conversation because they have good coaching on top of obviously talent. I'm not going to be shocked I would be shocked if they don't win the AFC West crown this year. But I am interested to see if their offense adjusts to more of more I formation, not I formation, but Mahomes under center running the ball and doing some play action. Because like I mentioned in the last podcast, one of the few teams that are a spread offense primarily and are successful, but that's just because they have, like I just mentioned, they have the coaches with the creativity and obviously the weapons. But as we saw in the Super Bowl, they need a little more balance. We'll see if they can do that, have a better short game and run game this year.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, I think that the offensive line and all the additions that they had for them, I think that a lot of people, ourselves included, obviously think that this was to protect Patrick Mahomes, but I think strategically they're looking towards Clyde Edwards-Helaire and saying, we drafted this guy in the first round. We want to use him. Like, we don't want this guy to be someone that, flashes off, in the first few weeks of the season, and then come playoff time, really, he doesn't make that big of an impact. I think that they beefed up this offensive line because I think they want to get him more involved. They obviously want to protect their investment in Patrick Mahomes, but you can further protect him by allowing your really good running back to do what he can do, and that's run the ball behind this massive offensive line now. So, yeah, I agree with you. I think that they're going to move towards a little more balance, throwing in some I-form stuff, and obviously with Andy Reid, you can only imagine what kind of trick plays they're going to start running out of that sort of formation. So yeah, that's the Chiefs.
Yeah.
Right.
Real quick, I am very curious to see the role Jerick McKinnon plays because we saw in San Francisco, we've seen throughout his career really. He's had really good moments. I think he's very well suited for the 2 role, not the 1 role that he's been forced to in times. So I'm interested to see if Reid maybe uses him as a slot receiver where it has like some double running back sets. That'll be very interesting to see.
Oh, they're absolutely going to use him in some sort of creative way. I think that's what they wanted out of Le'Veon Bell, but Le'Veon Bell doesn't necessarily have like the speed to do what I think they wanted. Jerick McKinnon, I think he fits more in that sort of slot mold as a running back because he can, outrun a lot of corners. So
great one cutback.